So over these last weeks, we've had a chance to get a sense of the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and we've seen how he met people as individuals, and he gave them the teachings and the care that they specifically needed. And through these stories, we gained a sense of what enlightenment looks like. There was the story of when he met Kisa Gotami and gave her this tender compassion, and the story of when he met Angulimala and exemplified this bold fearlessness. And tonight, we're going to be bridging from there into the archetypal realm, meeting Shakyamuni as an archetypal Buddha, and then moving into what is known as the symbol of the 5 Buddha mandala. And I'm aware that not everyone in this room will be aware of having a connection to the Buddha yet, though the fact that you're in this room means you very likely do have one somewhere. And the reason I'm saying this is because if we don't have a connection in our practice, in our spiritual lives, to something that is transcendental, to something that is of the enlightened mind, it's very likely we won't be aiming high enough with our ideals. Our practice will be more about comfort than about radical transformation. Sure. Vajrashura wrote recently, "The Dharma is more than just taking our daily spiritual vitamins so that we can do samsara better. It's about transforming self and world." So it might be that one of the historical stories that you've heard has helped you connect to the Buddha already, but there is another way we can connect, and that is through this realm of the archetypal. So I'm going to read a quote out from Bhante Sangha. So the beginning of the quote, because I'm going to sort of start in the middle, is he's just referencing the Pali scriptures or the Pali canon, which is what we've been looking at in this series so far. So going from that point, "They give us a vivid and deeply moving picture of the life and teaching career of the human historical Buddha. They contain all the basic spiritual principles and practices from which all the subsequent forms of Buddhism developed. They are rich in content and full of inspiration. We cannot possibly dispense with the Pali scriptures. As Buddhists, we are enormously indebted to them. Humanity, in fact, is indebted to them. They cannot be praised enough, and we cannot be sufficiently grateful for them. They do not, however, contain everything that everybody needs. There is an element missing, and it is this element that we find in the Mahayana scriptures. Reading the Mahayana scriptures, we are emancipated from the contingent and the determinate, from time, space, and causality, from historical reality. We experience archetypal reality, myth, the realm of undefined meanings. In technical terms, we encounter the Sambhogakaya. That is, we encounter the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Mahayana in their archetypal forms. Through this experience, we contact something within us of which we were not previously aware. Something is sparked off that even the Pali scriptures were unable to spark off. And this happens because the realm of archetypal reality, of myth, of undefined meanings corresponds to something within us." So tonight and for the next few talks, this is what we'll be exploring. What is it that sparks us off? And for those that currently perhaps identify as being particularly rational, and therefore perhaps are a bit wary of what I'm saying right now, something to remember is that there are 2 kinds of truth. There is scientific truth, which is the truth of concepts and reasoning, and there is poetic truth, the truth of the imagination, of images, of intuition, and both are important. So in Buddhism, an archetype is understood as, and this is me putting together all sorts of things to try and get a definition because it's quite unpinnable really, but I've given it a go. So in Buddhism, an archetype is understood as a universal, transcendent pattern or energy that represents fundamental aspects of the mind's ultimate potential. or that represent something of the nature of reality itself. So an archetypal Buddha or Bodhisattva personifies specific energies of enlightenment. So examples would be wisdom, compassion, energy, fearlessness. And these qualities are inherent in us as human beings. So you could think of an archetypal Buddha as a projection of one's own unconscious forces, which, when totally integrated, lead to spiritual liberation. And a symbol, which is easier to define, a symbol is something that exists on a lower plane that corresponds with something on a higher plane. So we're going to take the example of the lion. Here's an example of a lion on the lower plane. So the symbol of the lion, it has this rich symbolism, and it has done for thousands and thousands of years. I read today that 32,000 years ago is when they first found drawings of lions in this sort of form on a cave wall. So it's across cultures, it's across time. There's something of the qualities of this animal on this lower plane that denotes something higher. And some of those examples of those qualities that I particularly resonate with when I think of the image of the lion are strength, magnificence, nobility, protection, wisdom, and kingliness. And the Buddha, he had many epithets. So an epithet is like a descriptive title that's used to highlight a key characteristic or a quality. And if you come to Buddha Day in May, you'll hear loads of beautiful epithets of the Buddha. And some examples are the Tathagata, the Naga, the trackless one, and a beautiful one is Shakyamuni, so lion of the Shakya clan. So lion was used as an epithet of the Buddha. And he was known for his Sangha Nada, the lion's roar. The Buddha was said to proclaim the truth of the Dharma with a lion's roar. So see if that does anything to you, because if it does, that's something of the archetypal getting in. So there are all these different ways we can turn to and connect with the enlightened mind, and this includes symbol and archetype. It includes mantra, prayer, puja, images, imagination, visualization, and much more than that, dreams, all sorts of things. And I just really encourage you to consider what's your way into this. So we're going to spend a few minutes now just drinking in this image. So the original image at Padmaloka is painted by Arloka, and we have this, what do you call this, copy? Sure. We have this copy here, which is a beautiful image of the archetypal Shakyamuni Buddha, a Buddha in this way who is outside of time and space. And for tonight, I'm dropping in the symbol of the lion as a gateway. So I'll just say those words again. So lions can denote strength, magnificence, nobility, protection, wisdom, and kingliness. So I'm dropping in this suggested symbol of the lion. And it's worth saying, there are hundreds of gateways into symbols, into archetypes. And this is just one example that we're just going to experiment with tonight. So a few minutes to just look at this image of the Buddha. And if you're in a spot where that's hard, feel free to shuffle about. But I just really encourage you just to relax and just let the image in for a few minutes. I'm going to draw that to a close. I wondered if anyone, particularly in this patch, anyone actually, but just because you've had such a close-up view, if you're happy to share, were there any responses you've had looking at that image tonight?
I think I was really struck by his positioning, sort of grounded in this very sort of material world and kind of grasping. But then, of course, you've got the circle symbolizing eternity, and then you've got almost like what appears to be the universe in that behind his face, and his face is quite blurred within that as well, sort of suggesting his groundedness in material reality, but then also how the mind is much more kind of connected to the body. And in essence, we all come from stardust, so all of these kind of it's very modern.
That's beautiful. I want to repeat it back for everyone, but that was very beautiful. I'll do my best. No, it was really beautiful. So just to repeat that back. So Sophie evoked how you can see how grounded the Buddha is, but then going up into kind of the softening around it, the blurring into the universe, and this thing that, we're all made of stardust, something quite cosmic unfolding from that. Does that capture it okay? Yeah, great. That was great. Thanks, Sophie. Yeah, lovely. Anyone else? Beauty. Thanks, Alex. Beauty. Go on, Saffron.
It makes me feel calmer just looking at it.
Ah, that's beautiful. Saffron just said it just makes her feel calmer just looking at the image. Yeah, great. Thanks for taking part in that. Great. Yeah, so you could consider this. I mean, you might well have done this before in all sorts of ways, including on the introductory course, we do something like this. But consider tonight as a reintroduction to the archetypal Shakyamuni Buddha. And you can, this image usually lives in the red shrine in front of the fireplace. So, you can do this whenever you want, really. And you might remember in Bodhinaga's talk last week, he talked about how Mahanama and Pingiya, so, people alive at the time of the Buddha, took on this practice of, they can always be with the Buddha by bringing him to mind, like next to you when you're walking, bringing him to mind in your imagination, in your meditation practice. You could do your mindfulness of breathing and imagine breathing with the Buddha. You could do your metta bhavana in front of the Buddha. Like, you can bring the Buddha in all sorts of ways. And this is a practice that dates back thousands of years. It's something that they needed, and I think it's something that we need in whatever way it is for us. And you might remember that what really comes across in the stories is when the Buddha met someone, he would tailor his being and teaching to what they needed to help them to grow. And when we turn our mind to the Buddha in archetypal form, because of the kind of potent power of imagination, what usually happens is the enlightened mind somehow speaks to you through your being and meets you with what you need. So it is still possible now, kind of in this outside of time and space way. And if that sounds a bit, give it a go. Because it's true. So this enlightened mind, it takes on all sorts of forms because we're so different to each other. So, our individuality and particularity is so varied that there are all these different forms of archetypal Buddhas now because, there's one for whatever we need at whatever time it is. And you might not have found that yet, but you will. So about 1,300 years ago, a particularly helpful and beautiful symbol developed in the Buddhist tradition, and this symbol is known as the 5 Buddha mandala. So you might have heard this, but I'll say it again because it's a great image for it, is that if you imagine holding a prism, so a glass prism, and if a beam of pure white light hits a prism, when it comes out, it gets broken up into, Bhante says, all the glowing iridescent hues of the rainbow, which is lovely. So bright white light goes into a prism and we get all these different colors that come out of that. And this is a really kind of important base image, I suppose, for the archetypal Buddha and Bodhisattva realm. In the 5 Buddha mandala, in kind of color form, in the middle of the mandala, there's this circle of pure, bright white light, so pure white in the middle. And then around the middle, there are colors of red, blue, yellow, and green. And these are evoking particular facets, qualities of the enlightened mind. And this is what we're going to start exploring now and into the next few weeks. And this 5 Buddha mandala, within the archetypal realm, you have both the masculine and the feminine sort of depicted, which I find really helpful. The more masculine side of this are known as the 5 jhanas, and the feminine are known as the 5 pranyas. And these are pairs of Buddhas. So there's a pair of white Buddhas in the middle, a pair of blue, red, yellow, and green, that are honing in on a particular facet of enlightenment. So depending on your being, it might be you have a resonance with that, and that's what really helps you to grow. This is what we're exploring now. Also worth saying, so we're talking about white light breaking up into a prism, we're talking about white light breaking up into a rainbow. It's important to remember that ultimately it's all the same. So it's a fun thing in Buddhism, there's lots of paradoxes that you can hold. So I'm just going to read a little bit from Bhante about this. In any case, all the Buddhas are, in a manner of speaking, identical. The general significance of what is being conveyed is clear, that every part of your being is totally transformed. It's a matter of noticing which particular combination of colours and Buddhas spark you off. I like how much Bhante is using spark you off. I'm really enjoying that. So I'm saying 2 things. I'm saying that ultimately it's all Shakyamuni Buddha. And I'm saying that because of us being so individual, it can be really helpful to have a particular facet of enlightenment honed in on. And it might change over your kind of practice, but that is a useful thing. Does that make sense? Great. So the center of this mandala, the white light, so it's very much the center, I'd say, is the most beyond words to talk about, because it is the kind of very, very pure enlightened mind. The middle of the mandala emerges out of the archetypal Shakyamuni Buddha. So Shakyamuni, what emerges from him is this pair of blazing white light Buddhas. So in the center of this 5 Buddha mandala, we have a Buddha called Varochana. His name means the illuminator. And we have a Buddha called Akasha Dateshvari, and her name means Queen of the Sphere of Infinite Space. So these are the white archetypal Buddhas at the center of this mandala. And because they very much emerged from Shakyamuni 1,300 years ago, there's lots of really rich symbolism that really directly mirrors each other. So the wisdom that the white Buddhas embodies is known as the Dharma Dhatu wisdom. And I find this really hard to talk about because it is ineffable, really, but I'll have a go. So having a go, what is the Dharma Dhatu wisdom? It is the primordial awareness that directly realizes the true nature of all phenomena. And you can just let that wash over you, to be honest. And these blazing white Buddhas, they hold their hands in a particular mudra, which is the Dharma Chakra mudra. So it means the mudra of turning the wheel of the Dharma. So you do it with me if you like. So you want to put your hands at kind of heart level. You make 2 circles with your index finger. That's what index finger and your thumb. And then you sort of twist them together like this. So at the level of your heart. Yeah, I'm seeing beautiful examples all around. So this is the Dharma Chakra mudra, and this is how the white Buddhas hold their hands. And as you'll know, the Buddha, he is who turned the wheel of the Dharma for us, which resonates throughout time and space. And it's quite something that this many people are here on a rainy Tuesday night in Sheffield 3,000 years later. Like, it's quite remarkable how rich that is, that that's still going down. And the animal associated with these, so in the 5 Buddha mandala, there's all sorts of rich symbols, colors, times of day, all sorts of things. And there's also an animal associated with each of them. And it is the lion and the lioness that are associated with Varochana and Akasha Dateshvari. And in the images of them, particularly I've seen images of Varochana where he's sitting on this like white lotus throne, and it's upheld by lions. So a Buddha sitting on a throne upheld by lions. And I'm not going to say much more about this pair of Buddhas because they're this unity of form and emptiness. It is just Like I say, it's the pure white blazing light. It is beyond words. It is ineffable. So I don't really want to say more words about it. I think it's more things like this. It's like looking at images. Maybe I could ask Angie to maybe put a mantra onto Slack if people are interested in that, and then you could sort of hear the mantra and see if that does anything. But I think it feels right to stop talking about them now. So I'm coming to the end. And I'm going to end by reading a quote from Bhante twice about meaning, about what I'm trying to point to through this talk. Meaning is not a thing that you can grasp by looking in a dictionary. Meaning must be meaning for you, something that you personally experience. Our quest for meaning is therefore our quest for ourselves, our quest for the totality, the wholeness of our own being. On one level, we belong to the realm of historical reality, but on another, we belong to the realm of spiritual reality. The Mahayana scriptures reveal this world to us. So does myth, so does poetry. And they reveal it to us not as something external to ourselves, but as our own world, as a world in which we ourselves actually live, usually without knowing it. Meaning is not a thing that you can grasp by looking in a dictionary. Meaning must be meaning for you, something that you personally experience. Our quest for meaning is therefore our quest for ourselves, our quest for the totality, the wholeness of our own being. On one level, we belong to the realm of historical reality, but on another, we belong to the realm of spiritual reality. The Mahayana scriptures reveal this world to us. So does myth, so does poetry. And they reveal it to us not as something external to ourselves, but as our own world, as a world in which we ourselves actually live, usually without knowing it. Thanks.